In a survey, 24% of 235 single women said that they definitely want to have children. In the same survey, 26% of 290 single men gave the same response. Construct a 90% confidence interval estimate of the difference between the proportions of single women and single men who definitely want to have children. Is there a gender gap? So the first thing we might do is organize this information that we're given. We have women and we have men. And we're given a sample proportion, p hat for women, of 0.24, and n, a sample size, or number of observations, of 235. For men, the sample proportion is 26%, or 0.26, and the sample size, or number of observations, is 290. Now, when we go to put this information into StatCrunch, it's not going to want p hat. It's going to want the number of successes, or x. Well, p hat, the sample proportion, is found by dividing the number of successes by the number of observations. So we can solve for x just by plugging in the information we know. 0.24 then would be equal to x over 235. And in order to solve for x, I would just multiply both sides by 235, which makes sense. The number of successes is 24% of 235, or 0.24 times 235, which will give us 56.4 for x. But since StatCrunch isn't going to allow us to have part of a person, we'll round that to 56. Now we'll do the same thing for men. So p hat equal to x over n, 0.26 equal to x over 290. So that means then that 0.26 times 290 will equal to x for the men. And again, all that means is just 26% of 290. That's going to give us 75.4, which again we're going to round to 75. So the next thing we want to do is hit StatCrunch and hit Stat Proportions to Sample with Summary. Now we're going to plug in this information that we found here. For sample 1, we've got 56 number of successes and 235 observations. For sample 2, we've got 75 as our number of successes out of 290 observations. Now we'll hit Next, Confidence Interval. We're to find a 90% confidence interval, so we'll make this say 0.9 and hit Calculate. Now this gives us some endpoints, and we're supposed to round these endpoints to 3 decimal places. So this is going to be minus 0.083 for our left endpoint. And then our right endpoint will be 0.042. Check our answer. Now it asks, is there a gender gap? Well, something that we might notice about this particular interval here is that it contains 0. And now, for that interval to contain 0 means that P1 minus P2 could be equal to 0, meaning that there would be no difference at all. So since that interval contains 0, we can say then that there is not a gender gap. So right here, D says, since the interval contains 0, there is no evidence of a gender gap.